I'm reaching out for some advice on a personal matter. To ensure privacy, I'm using a throwaway account and fictitious names. Here's a bit about me. I'm a 26-year-old game developer in Bath. Despite a successful career marked by a recent promotion, I've been feeling somewhat unfulfilled, proving the old adage that money can't buy happiness. My major source of discontent is my family dynamics. I lost my mum in a car accident when I was 16, a traumatic event that was compounded when my dad remarried just a year later. He married Sophia, who has never really made me feel welcome. They had my half-sister Mila, who is now 14, and the one family member I feel genuinely connected to. Sophia has always tried to keep Mila at a distance from me, but fortunately we've remained close. Growing up, I always felt like an outsider in my father's new family. My efforts to stay involved often felt unreciprocated, making our relationship feel like a one-sided endeavour. A few weeks ago, my dad called me unexpectedly during work hours to ask for help with moving to a new house, a task Sophia had been wanting for a long time. Eager for a chance to bond, I took some time off and prepared thoroughly, buying new tools and equipment for the move. On moving day, I arrived early, ready to make an impression and hopefully strengthen our relationship. However, I was met with indifference from Sophia and a mere nod from my dad. As I laboured hard, moving furniture and packing boxes, Sophia openly praised the hired movers, ignoring my efforts. To add insult to injury, Sophia accidentally broke a photo frame with my childhood picture and dismissed it as trash, a sentiment my father did nothing to counter. To make matters worse, Mila was sent away for the day, likely to keep her from interacting with me. I'm left feeling more like an outsider than ever, and I'm uncertain about how to proceed with my relationship with my dad and his new family. Any advice on how to handle this situation would be greatly appreciated. Throughout the day, I shifted things around, but the weight of the moment lingered. As I rummaged, I stumbled upon childhood items stuffed in garbage bags, seemingly discarded. Shocked, I realised these were memories I had assumed were safely stored, or perhaps lost forever. Instead, they were destined for the trash. Secretly, I saved a few precious pieces and hid them in my car's trunk. The new house contrasted sharply with the old one, large, modern, and nestled in a wealthy neighbourhood. Sophia was thriving, eagerly giving a grand tour to a gathering of friends and family. I lingered at the back, feeling increasingly alienated, like a visitor in a stranger's life story. Sophia, absorbed in showcasing the upscale kitchen and vast living room, didn't include me. I overheard her expressing relief to my dad that the move was behind them as a fresh start awaited. That's when I heard it, the conversation that broke me. My dad echoed her sentiments, implying the move was a step away from past mistakes, which I knew referred to me. The urge to confront them was overwhelming, but I restrained myself to avoid a scene. However, as the guests departed and emotion surged, I confronted them. Sophia responded with feigned concern, suggesting I had misunderstood. My dad tried to mediate, claiming it was all a misunderstanding, but I couldn't hold back any longer. I unleashed years of bottled-up emotions about feeling like an outsider and being treated as an afterthought by them. Sophia's indifference was palpable. She dismissed my feelings with a roll of her eyes, cautioning me against causing a scene. Overwhelmed, I left, tears barely restrained, refusing to let them see the depth of my hurt. The drive back was a blur of turmoil, and upon reaching my apartment, I withdrew from the world, taking days off under the guise of illness. A few days later, a terse text from my dad arrived, apologising for the heated exchange, but clearly more concerned with appearances than genuine reconciliation. Later, scrolling through Facebook, I found Sophia's post from the housewarming party, a glaring reminder of my exclusion. Everyone was tagged but me, and the narrative spun was that I was too engulfed in work to attend. The next day, I confronted them again, only to receive dismissive justifications and hollow assurances. It was clear they were keen on minimising my presence in their lives, relegating me to the background as a mere oversight from their past. At first, I was tempted to pull off a dramatic stunt to make them truly regret how they'd been treating me. But then, an idea formed from a past favour I'd done for them. I'd set up their entire home system when they first moved in, giving me access to everything: lights, thermostat, security cameras, even the smart locks. As I mulled it over, the notion of subtly disrupting their daily life grew more enticing. I decided to engage in minor, irritating tactics. Not anything too harsh, just enough to unsettle their comfort. It was petty, yes, but in my mind they had it coming. I began with the lights, making them flicker at random intervals. It was subtle, not enough to cause alarm, but just enough to annoy. Next was the TV, which I programmed to turn on and off at inconvenient times, especially when Sophia was settled in for her evening shows. Then I tampered with the thermostat, alternating the house temperature from stifling heat to bone-chilling cold during the night. The security system was my next target. I programmed it to trigger false alarms sporadically throughout the week, timed perfectly when they were beginning to relax. Using the security cameras, I watched their frustration mount with each new disruption. There was a perverse satisfaction in seeing Sophia's panic over the flickering lights, or the TV suddenly changing channels. It was like my own private show. Their bafflement escalated to the point where they suspected the house was haunted. I even overheard my dad describing the strange occurrences to a friend over the phone. Sophia, thoroughly convinced, hired a psychic to cleanse the house. I watched, barely stifling laughter, as the psychic earnestly waved sage around, chanting and performing her rituals. Unfortunately, my younger cousin Mila got swept up in the drama too. She became genuinely frightened, convinced her room harboured shadows waiting to pounce. This made me feel a twinge of guilt. My intention was never to scare her. But the situation escalated when my tech-savvy nephew visited. He noticed something off with the home system and quickly uncovered signs of my tampering. My tracks weren't well hidden, and he didn't take long to trace the disruptions back to me. I thought that might be the end of my antics, but then came an unexpected knock on my apartment door. It was my dad, looking more desperate than I had ever seen him. Without any pleasantries, he directly asked if I was behind the weird occurrences at their house. Facing him, I couldn't lie. I admitted everything and explained why I did it. He was shocked, probably not expecting such honesty. The argument that followed was heated. He accused me of being childish and taking things too far. I retaliated, airing years of grievances about feeling excluded and marginalised by him and Sophia. The confrontation was loud enough that neighbours began to peer out, drawn by the commotion. After our intense exchange, my dad left, looking defeated. The fallout was immediate. Sophia appeared at my workplace, thankfully not causing a scene, but clearly there to confront me. The incident wasn't taken lightly by my boss, and I ended up having to explain the entire messy affair. Word spread fast through the family, spearheaded by my dad. I was soon bombarded with angry texts and calls from relatives, while social media became a battlefield of passive-aggressive posts and divided loyalties. Yet, some relatives reached out in support, understanding the depth of my frustrations. At first, reactions were mixed. Some understood why I had acted out, while others branded me as immature and vindictive. Through all the chaos, Mila remained silent. A few days later, she reached out privately, telling me she missed me and didn't believe the negative things her mum was saying. Her message resonated deeply with me. It was comforting to know she still cared, despite the turmoil. Around the same time, I began noticing an influx of advertisements for DNA testing kits on every digital corner. Whether it was mere coincidence or the universe pointing me towards a revelation during my ongoing family crisis, I decided to take the plunge. Curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to explore my ancestry. Weeks later, the results arrived, and they shattered my world. The man I had always called Dad was not my biological father. At first, I was in denial, double-checking the results, but They were unequivocal. Suddenly, past interactions took on new meaning. The distant behaviour from my dad, the way Sophia had edged me out, it all clicked. I was never truly part of their family. Compelled by a need for closure, I confronted my dad and Sophia with the DNA results in hand. My dad's reaction was one of utter shock. He confessed that my mother had an affair with his best friend, and I was the result. Sophia's reaction was chilling. Her initial shock quickly gave way to a smug satisfaction, as if she now had ammunition against me. I felt a wave of nausea realising I had been clinging to a semblance of family that never really existed. After the confrontation, I made the painful decision to sever ties with my dad and Sophia. It was clear there was nothing left to salvage. They were never truly family in the emotional sense. It was a tough decision, but one that felt necessary for my own well-being. The hardest part was figuring out what to do about Mila. She was innocent in all of this, and I didn't want to lose our connection. We've continued to communicate secretly, and I've reassured her that I'll always be there for her, no matter what. Family reactions were mixed. Some supportive, others furious, and a few remained neutral, preferring to stay out of the drama. I can't blame them. It's a complex and messy situation. As for searching for my biological father, I am undecided. He's never reached out, so perhaps it's best to leave that chapter closed. The overwhelming consensus was to maintain no contact with my dad and Sophia. Despite this advice, I reached out to my dad before posting my original story. I was looking for some kind of affirmation that reaching out wasn't a huge mistake, or maybe I just needed to clear the air before any further fallout. Regardless, I was the one who broke the no contact rule. It wasn't a grand gesture. I didn't stand under his window with a boombox over my head playing "In Your Eyes." It was a straightforward, brief text. "We need to talk. Can we meet up this week?" I didn't receive an immediate reply, which left me second-guessing my decision and feeling foolish for even trying. However, by evening, my phone finally buzzed. It was my dad responding simply with, "Sure, when and where?" So why did I do it? Why breach the no-contact rule when even my own better judgment screamed that it was a mistake? The answer is simple. I needed closure. There were too many unresolved issues haunting me. The DNA test, my mum's affair, years of feeling out of place. All of it weighed heavily on me, and walking away without any resolution was something I just couldn't do. This wasn't entirely about forgiveness or reconciliation. It was about understanding. I needed to know why my dad had treated me the way he did, why he allowed Sophia to dominate, and why he never revealed the truth about my parentage. I needed these answers to move forward, and avoiding him wasn't going to help me find them. I understand that many might view this as a weak move, that I was setting myself up for more disappointment and pain. Believe me, I've wrestled with those thoughts too. I've read the comments labelling me a pushover, a doormat. But here's the thing. This isn't about weakness. It's about personal growth. I've spent my entire life letting others control my story, dictating how things should unfold. Reaching out to my dad was about taking control of my own narrative, on my own terms. Yes, it was risky, but necessary for my own peace of mind. If I didn't take this step, I knew I'd never truly be able to move on. We agreed to meet at my place. I didn't want to meet at his house, especially not with Sophia around. She has a way of exacerbating already tense situations, and I didn't need her interference in this delicate conversation. Plus, being in my own space, I felt more comfortable and in control. In the days leading up to our meeting, I was a nervous wreck. I played out various scenarios in my head, pondering his possible reactions. Defensive, apologetic. Maybe he wouldn't show up at all. The uncertainty was maddening. When the day finally arrived, I found myself pacing in my living room, checking the clock every few minutes. Right on time, there was a knock at the door. Opening it, I saw my dad standing there, looking a bit older and more tired than I remembered. It had only been a few weeks since we last saw each other, but it felt like years had passed. We exchanged a tense, awkward greeting. No hug, no handshake, just a muttered, "Hey," from both of us. He followed me into the living room, taking a seat on the couch while I settled into an armchair across from him. We sat in silence for a moment, neither of us sure how to begin. Eventually, I initiated some small talk to break the ice, chatting about work, the weather, and some new tech gadgets we'd both been eyeing. It was trivial, but it helped ease us into the more serious conversation that needed to happen. Once the atmosphere had warmed slightly, the conversation shifted. I could see my dad's demeanour change. He became more guarded, aware of the heavier topics looming. I didn't want to dance around the subject any longer. I brought up the DNA test, the affair, and everything that had been revealed recently. I asked him directly why he had never told me the truth, why he allowed me to grow up believing I was his son. When I confronted him, his initial reaction was defensive. He explained that he had hidden the truth to protect me, believing it was better if I didn't know. He admitted that he had been unsure how to handle the situation after my mum passed away, and by the time he remarried, it just seemed easier to let things be as they were. His apology followed, but it felt half-hearted. More like he was apologising because he knew he should, not because he genuinely felt remorse. I pressed him further, bringing up specific instances from my childhood when he seemed distant or allowed Sophia to treat me as an outsider. He claimed he hadn't realised how severe things had become, confessing that he was too engulfed in his own grief and the challenges of building a new life to notice the effect on me. At one point, he became emotional, discussing his struggles after my mum's death, even after she had been unfaithful, and how ill-equipped he felt being a single parent, especially to a child who wasn't biologically his. He insisted he had always loved me, though he acknowledged he hadn't shown it properly. The conversation turned to Sophia. I pointed out how she had manipulated him and dismissed me as a nuisance. He didn't deny this, but he didn't fully admit the extent of her negative influence either. He tried to justify her behaviour by suggesting she was just trying to do her best in her own way. It was evident he was still in denial about her toxic actions, which was incredibly frustrating. I tried to make him understand how deeply Sophia's actions had hurt me and made me feel excluded from the family. He listened, but I wasn't convinced he fully grasped the impact. It seemed he still wanted to believe that Sophia had good intentions, even if her actions suggested otherwise. This showed me he was caught between defending his wife and acknowledging the pain they had caused me. As we moved past, discussing our painful history, I steered the conversation toward the future. I asked him what he envisioned going forward and whether he saw a place for me in his life. He said he did, but I made it clear that for any relationship to continue, things would have to change dramatically. I emphasised that moving forward would require real, tangible changes in how we interacted and how he managed his relationship with Sophia, especially in how it affected me. We left the conversation with a tentative hope for a better future, but I knew it would take effort and possibly time to heal and possibly rebuild something genuine between us. I realised I needed to establish clear boundaries. Sophia could not be part of our interactions, at least for the foreseeable future. Her manipulative behaviour was something I could no longer tolerate. He agreed, though I could see it was difficult for him. We discussed setting up regular meetings, just the three of us, to begin mending our relationship. It was a challenging agreement to make, but it felt like a necessary step forward. I wasn't ready to fully re-engage, but I also wasn't prepared to sever ties completely. As our conversation wound down, the emotional exhaustion from our deep, sometimes painful discussions was palpable. With little left to say, we concluded our meeting. We stood and shared an awkward, hesitant hug. It was one of those tentative embraces where neither person really knows how to proceed. It wasn't much, but it was something. After he left, closing the door quietly behind him, I sank into my couch, overwhelmed by the need to process everything. For now, I decided to maintain a limited, controlled contact with him. I wasn't going to dive headfirst back into the relationship, but I wasn't ready to cut him out of my life either. It was a compromise, one I hoped would allow me the space I needed to heal while keeping the door ajar for a possible future reconciliation. I know some might still think I'm making a mistake, setting myself up for more heartache, and perhaps they're right. But this was a step I needed to take for myself. I needed to confront my father and address the issues that had been haunting me for years. It wasn't easy and it didn't magically resolve everything, but it was a step forward. I appreciate all of the advice and support you all have given me, even if I didn't follow it to the letter. At the end of the day, this is my life, and I have to make decisions that feel right for me, even if they aren't the most popular ones. That's where things stand right now. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I'm hopeful that I can find some peace with all of this one way or another. Thanks again for all your input and even the tough love. It's helped me more than you know. I'll probably continue to lurk around here for a while. Now, I've got a lot of personal and relational work to do, and it's time to focus on that.